Hello everyone, thank you for attending this presentation. My name is Luis Moraes and I'm a postdoc at INRIA Bordeaux with the Potioc team. In this video, I'll present results from a collaboration with Yvonne Janssen, Nazareno Andrade, and Pierre Dragicevic. In this work, we contributed to advance the design space of anthropographics. Anthropographics are data visualizations about people, intended to promote prosocial feelings such as empathy or compassion, or prosocial behavior like donating to a charity. This is an example of anthropographic that I created in collaboration with an NGO that supports cancer patients and their families in Brazil. In this visualization, each flower represents a story of a different woman who overcame breast cancer in Brazil. This is a part of a campaign to make people aware of breast cancer issues and to motivate people to donate for helping patients with cancer. I intended to make people relate to cancer patients as a whole by presenting stories of some people. Here are two more examples of anthropographics. Both focus on people who died because of gunshots in the United States. And as you can see, designers use different design strategies to touch people through visualizations. The one on the left represents people as human-shaped marks and allows viewers to get more information about each victim by clicking on the mark. On the other hand, the chart on the right shows the number of deaths across the country, representing each victim as a red dot. These are just a few examples of how practitioners use different design strategies to create such visualizations. For our work, we analyze a rich corpus of anthropographics and distill the design space and conceptual framework. This work aims to facilitate the design, critique, comparison, and empirical evaluation of such visualizations. We build on a previous design space of anthropographics proposed by Boy and colleagues, which included 4 dimensions. We then started an iterative process of collecting visualizations, categorizing them according to the existing dimensions, and looking for designs that didn't fit the previous design space. After establishing a stable set of definitions and dimensions, we performed a multicoder evaluation. Before starting to collect visualizations, we decided on some criteria for limiting the work scope. First, we only consider visualizations that represent data about people. For example, we picked charts that show statistics about gunshot deaths in the United States or stories of women who fought breast cancer in Brazil, but we didn't collect visualizations about animal suffering or other topics related to people's data. Second, we were only interested in visualizations about real people. That means we didn't consider simulation-based cases. For example, a visualization that presents the death rate of different diseases in a simulated population. Lastly, we also restricted our context to visualizations with a communicative intent. It means that we included infographics from newspapers, for example, but excluded visualizations produced for purely analytic purposes. This is a small excerpt of our resulting list of anthropographics. We collected those visualizations from blogs, papers, and other media. We used the first 105 charts for devising the design space, but we've been adding more as we came across them. As I previously mentioned, we extended the design space by Boy and colleagues. Their original design space had 4 design dimensions. Class of visualization corresponds to whether the visualization represents data in a fine-grained way or as aggregated marks. Human shape is a bidimensional characteristic that corresponds to how realistic and expressive the marks are. The combination of those 2 dimensions specifies whether the marks resemble abstract forms or look more like a human shape. Unit labeling is whether there is textual information about each person and how specific this information is. Generic labels do not display any specific information. Iconic labels show information about an individual, but the person is not identified. And unique marks show information about specific individuals. Unit grouping corresponds to the layout of the marks. It can be in a form of grid or in a more organic way. After iterating over collecting new visualizations and trying to apply Boy et al.'s design space, we modified and expanded it. We renamed the class of visualization as granularity and treated it as a continuum. This allows us to distinguish between 2 types of unit visualizations: those where each mark represents a single person and those where each mark represents a fixed number of people. The previous dimension of realism directly maps to ours, but our framework expands its definition to also include marks such as photographs and real humans. We initially included expressiveness in our design space, but we removed it after our multicoder evaluation because we found it hard to define and operationalize. We incorporated unit labeling into more general dimension of specificity, which allowed us to capture cases where information about people is conveyed in a non-textual manner. We also removed unit grouping because it is specific to unit visualizations and was not commonly used as a strategy. Let me now explain our proposed design space in more detail. Granularity is the extent to which people are mapped to separate marks. In a visualization with low granularity, each mark corresponds to a group of people who have one or more attribute values in common. For example, this statistical chart on the left has low granularity because each segment of a different color represents the sum of immigrants in a period of time. In a visualization with intermediate granularity, each mark maps to a fixed number of persons, and this number must be greater than 1. The visualization in the middle is an isotype where each mark represents 1 million soldiers, for example. Finally, in a visualization with maximum granularity, each data item corresponds to a single person. In the map on the right, for instance, each red dot corresponds to a person who died by a gunshot. Specificity refers to how distinctive the visualized people are. It means that the more data attributes help to distinguish between data items, the higher the specificity. In the map on the left, for example, the persons represented by red dots cannot be distinguished from each other. On the other hand, in the visualization on the right, each person can be easily distinguished from others because of their attributes. Coverage is the extent to which people from a broader population are represented in the visualization. The visualization about women who survived breast cancer on the left, for example, contains only a subset of stories from a larger population. The goal here is to zoom on specific people to communicate about issues that concern a broader population. On the other hand, the visualization on the right shows data about all the victims of gunshots in the United States, so it has full coverage. Authenticity corresponds to the proportion of genuine information shown in the visualization, that is, information based on the data. For example, the visualization on the left has partial authenticity because the names of the victims are invented. On the other hand, all information from the visualization on the right is genuine. Realism is the degree of resemblance of the visualization's marks to actual persons. The visualizations below show the different levels of realism, ranging from abstract marks such as dots to very realistic marks consisting of real people. Physicality refers to the degree to which a visualization's marks are embedded in physical objects as opposed to shown on a flat display. The visualization on the right is an example of maximum physicality, since the marks are real people. Finally, situatedness corresponds to how close the mark and the person it represents are to each other. The visualization on the left has low situatedness because it's far from the actual persons they represent. On the other hand, the visualization on the right has maximum situatedness because the marks are the actual persons they represent. There are also intermediate levels of situatedness that we discuss in more detail in our paper. Based on the combination of dimensions, we derive families of visualizations. The non-anthropomorphic designs are composed of visualizations that do not resemble a human being. On the other hand, anthropomorphic designs contain visualizations that resemble human beings. Finally, atypical designs are less frequent design choices in the design space of anthropographics. You can explore the families in detail in our paper. While conducting this work, we identified some opportunities for the area of anthropographics. First, despite the increasing number of studies that explore how visualization designs affect feelings or prosocial behavior, there are dimensions such as coverage, situatedness, and physicality that are still unexplored. Another promising direction is investigating hybrid designs that combine characteristics of statistical charts and anthropographic designs. For example, creating visualizations that allow the user to transition between overviews and more specific data about individuals. Finally, another interesting strategy for anthropographics could be creating visualizations that adapt to the viewer. For example, customizing the visualization based on the viewer's location or demographical information. Those are just a few examples of how we could explore this field of anthropographics. Thank you very much. If you're interested in learning more about our design space of anthropographics, please read our TVCG paper.